I'm Nick Thomas-Sunis, one of the founding members of MX Locker. I've been racing motocross since the age of 3. We all know how expensive this sport is and the dedication it takes. Being a privateer is not easy, and that's why MX Locker was founded. MX Locker allows you to earn extra cash for the riding gear, bike parts, and dirt bikes you no longer use. It's a community full of riders, including racers and privateers like myself. It keeps my program going.
What is going on? Today's video, I'm going to be going over the top 5 pros and cons of owning a Stark Varg. Now, this is probably one of the most controversial bikes in the entire industry as of right now. A lot of people love it and a lot of people hate it. I figured why not go over my list of pros and cons, what I love about it, what I'm not so stoked about, and some of the things that I've had to do to make it more comfortable for me. So we'll start with some of my favorite things about this bike. Number 1 is the ability to have full control over basically this entire bike. You can adjust the horsepower, you can adjust the regenerative braking, which depending on the riding I do, I have it set at different levels for different types of riding. Say if I'm gonna go ride a ramp and I'm gonna go throw whips, I put the regenerative braking all the way down so the bike will freewheel. This allows me to have the max amount of rear wheel gyro in the air and be able to, basically flick this bike around. I will say, side note, this bike is the bike to have for whipping. I probably don't know if I will ever touch my 450 again if I'm trying to throw like massive whips, just because of how much better this bike is for whips. And I'll probably get canceled in the comments for saying that, but this bike is just on another level when it comes to that. But yeah, the ability to adjust literally everything on this bike. Obviously, that's only possible with electric. You have to change a ton of stuff on a 450 to adjust different things and find what you're looking for. On this, you can literally do it just off of the phone on the crossbar. Number 2 is the fact that this thing has literally no maintenance whatsoever. I have 37 hours or so on this bike, and I have, no lie, ever adjusted the chain on it. I believe that's because obviously there's no clutch, so it's not like stretching and snapping the chain. But even then, like, I still have yet to adjust this chain. It's still got the stock chain, the stock sprockets. So the low maintenance factor is a huge part of this bike. You're not doing filters, you're not doing oil. It doesn't need a top end. You don't gotta literally just ride the thing. I feel like 30 hours on this bike versus 30 hours on a 450 is a completely different world. Number 3 is the instant comfort I felt the minute I hopped on this bike. It reminds me a lot of like a 125 or like a 252 stroke, just because it's so thin. It's also one of the cons of it. I'll get into that a little bit later in this video. It's so comfortable, by far the most comfortable bike I've ever ridden. Anybody that I let ride it says the same exact thing. It is so comfortable. The ergonomics of it, the rider triangle of it is by far the most comfortable, easy feeling bike I've ever ridden. I did put my own handlebars on it. I didn't like the stock bars. They're very low. They're meant for more of like a shorter rider. Bars on it, and they sent me some really sweet tie foot pegs I threw on it as well. But other than that, I've done nothing to this bike, like comfort wise. Number 4 would be the zero noise restriction. Yes, it does make a little bit of a sound, and you can obviously hear when somebody's riding it if you're up close. If you're not up close, you have no clue. And I think that's going to allow for tracks to be built, and possibly even like electric only tracks to be built in more common places like bigger cities, somebody's backyard, places that you wouldn't normally have a dirt bike track. And number 5, of course, I had to throw this in there, is the looks of it. Thing looks so sick. It is probably the best looking bike. I'm a little biased because I really like the new Yamahas. These bikes do kind of look like a Yamaha front end, or Yamaha kind of looks like the Stark, whichever way you want to put it. We'll say the rear fender is like a little thin. It kind of comes out to like a weird point. Outside of that, like, this thing looks so sick. I absolutely love just sitting here and looking at this thing. It even has like the little forged carbon, like, I guess where on the Yamaha the airbox area would be. This bike has like the forged carbon with like the gold logo on it. It just looks super cool. Also, I'm gonna throw this in the video. If you have any questions regarding your Stark Varg or your dirt bike in general, whether it's parts or even gear questions, whatever it is, head over to mxlocker.com or download the MX Locker app. And use their brand new feature called Shop with an Expert. You can chat with me, Jeff Walker, Jeff Emig, and a couple other top professional athletes. Get our opinion, our advice. Literally, you can text me personally and ask me anything you want. I thought that's a really cool thing. I'm throwing this in the middle of this video now because I know you guys are gonna have questions, and I'm probably not gonna be able to answer every single question. And in case I miss any of your questions here, go head over to MX Locker and ask them there. Now we will get into the things that I'm not necessarily super stoked on about this bike. Number one is it's very slippery. Now I want to say this is because it's so thin, and I'm used to having like the indent from the pipe on a regular 450. So I had to go out and add grip tape. I'm not sure if companies make grip tape for the Stark yet, like moto companies. I mean, you don't really need that. You can kind of just make your own. I went out and bought step tape from Lowe's, like the grip tape that goes on the steps, and just stuck it on the side of the bike, and it fixed the issue just like that. Number two would be the fact that there is no actual clutch. Yes, I mentioned earlier that I added a fake clutch, but that's not really what I'm talking about. I like having to be able to, you know, pop the front end up over stuff. Or if you're a racer, obviously you do starts with your clutch. You use a clutch for everything on an actual gas-powered dirt bike, right? So for me, certain types of riding, like if I'm trying to do something more technical, it's a little bit more difficult on the Stark, and I sometimes prefer the 450 if I'm trying to do something pretty difficult and I really need to like pop the front end up over something quick, or if I'm trying to like hop bumps or do something like that, I need a clutch. And on this, you don't have a clutch. There is pros to that as well. You don't have to use the clutch when you're riding, so it's less to think about, carry more roll speed, etc. But in my personal opinion, I like having the clutch. Not a huge downfall, but it's something I would love to see them implement in some way sooner than later in the future. Now, number three, the battery life. This is something a lot of people complain about. It's understandable. If the track is deep and the track's rutted, even on a full charge, I'm probably only gonna get like 15 to be at a max 20 minutes out of it, wide open, like pro level pace. Obviously the generic public is probably gonna get a little bit more out of it than that. But if I go to a track that's tilled like pro national prep, you're putting more load on the battery. It's not going to last as long as you would wish, but that's understandable. Battery technology still has a ways to come. First iteration of it still did a very good job, and especially with like the weight of batteries, for this bike to be, I believe, only 20 pounds heavier than a 450. No, it doesn't feel like it, by the way. It feels a lot lighter, which is why I prefer to whip it. But just for general battery technology as a whole, I think they nailed it. Although I would love to see it, and I know it will improve in the future. Number four is one more thing with the battery. At least I have not found a way that it would be hot swappable. This would be great for when you're going to the race or you're going to the track, and this would probably eliminate some of the issues that I have with battery life, would be to just throw in a new battery and go. I feel like if they could get it to that point, it would eliminate the issues with, at least some of the issues with the battery life at the track and being able to come in and charge it. Because it does take a while to charge, especially if you just have like a regular generator. So that does kind of hinder taking it to the public track a little bit. I will add, while I was editing this video, I kind of wanted to go and question this a little bit. So I went to my contact at Stark. They said they are able to swap the batteries in 1 minute and 32 seconds. So it is kind of hot swappable. I'd say it takes a lot of guidance, but it is possible. Now, number five, this is more of a specific issue, something that I have struggled with a little bit on it, and that is judging stuff like jumps and figuring a new track out without the sound and without gears and without knowing speed or what gear I should say, hit the jump in. Obviously, it's not an issue for smaller jumps, and most public tracks are fine, but like if I was going to go to Redbud and I had to hit the leap, I don't know how I would do it first on this. I would almost have to go out and do it on my 450 and get the feel for the speed, and then come back and do it on the Varg. Even at my personal little compound here, I have some pretty big jumps. They're like 110, 120. They're pretty big. So having to sack up and hit those jumps for the first time on the Varg is pretty nerve-wracking, because I don't know if I have enough speed, if I'm gonna come up short, what's gonna happen. So it's been a little bit of a learning curve with that. Obviously, I don't think there's a fix for it. You just kind of got to get the feel and got to get used to it. After 37 hours on this bike, I'm starting to figure it out. Not a downfall, but it's something that is just different, and it's difficult to learn at first with this bike. Anyways, those are my top 5 pros and cons of the all-electric Stark Varg dirt bike. Interested to hear what you guys think in the comments. Let me know if you guys are all for the electric or if you absolutely cannot stand it. Make sure to drop them down below. I'll be reading and responding to every comment I see. But until next time, I will catch you guys later.